Now, by the end of today's video, you're going to have all the tips and tricks to deck out your garden room or shed flat roof and get it completely watertight, just like this. Now here's the span table, and let's go through this before we start building, as we need to know what size joist to use on the size of our span. Now on the right hand side here, you've got C24, that's the timber you'll use for the span, as it's stronger and you can get away with a larger span for the size of the timber. On garden rooms you've got height restrictions, and the same goes for sheds, so we want to stick with a 6x2, and that is a 145 by 47 mil. Over here, and it says here we can use up to a 3.47 meter span using that. Now this is very sensitive numbers here, and what I found is you can actually get away with a 4 meter span with a 6x2, and we'll show you in the video later exactly how we can prove that, as we tested it with load on the roof deck, and it proves that you can actually get no deflection when you go a larger span. These are just very safe numbers, and they're mostly to do with building regulations. On the bottom here, you've got assumptions at 400 mil centers, so that's spacing your roof joists 400 mil apart, and on the bottom is supporting a permanent load of up to 50 kilos per meter square, which will be your OSB and your rubber. And the numbers they've given are supporting imposed loads for access and repair only, so they're not numbers if you want to go and put extra weight on there, such as solar panels or anything like that. If you've got any questions regarding the span table, please drop them in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer them. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so you can get some more handy tips just like this. Now we've looked at the span table and we've calculated what size joist we need, we're going to mark out where our joists are going. So if you come up here with me, now it doesn't matter where the joists sit on the wall, they can sit in the center of the studs or on top of them, it doesn't matter. It's actually easier if they sit in the middle because you can screw up into them easier to fix them to the building. But how we mark it out is like this. So we start here and we're going to start the first one with 37.7. So that's going to be our first line there, and that's going to work just fine. And that basically means put an X next to it, that's where the stud will sit, to the right of that line. And now, because if you marked it at 400, you're going to have to guess whereabouts the center is of the stud. So you do 37.7, and that is about the right measurement for the start of this roof joist. Then what you do is you pop a screw in here like this, sink it in dead in line with that. And if you're by yourself now, you can just pop your tape on that, and then from there on it's going to be every 400, so 4, 8, 12 and so on. And what you do is you just put your little mark where that 400 is, get a nice little pocket screw, these are super handy, run your line across like that to the front and then down. Simple as that. There's your line, and then put an X next to it like Lee's already done here, and then you can just sit your joist, it's going to go to the right of every line, and that's going to be perfect 400 centers each joist. Screw up and we'll show you how we fix those in a bit. But now we're going to get on to determining the length of your joist. Now this is how we determine the length of our joist. So we've got our C24 timber up there, that's a 6x2, and if you come up here with me, I'll show you how we set this all out. Now get one of these joists up and slide it along. Now this is the measurement we use on the garden rooms. If you're doing a shed or something, it might be a bit different, but this number works well because we have our double batten of 50 mil, and then we have our cladding which protrudes another 30 mil. So how I do this to get the size is I put my tape there, and can they see that, Lee? If you come over, you get it in line with the 80 mil. So we want it to be overhanging 80 mil, bang on the dot there like that. And that's how we do it. So we pop that there, that gives us 80 mil clearance there. We're going to have a perimeter of 47 mil on the back, and that will give us loads of clearance to put a nice little soffit under there, and it just keeps the gutter away from the building. So you want about 80 mil hanging off the back. Now we'll go to the front. All right, now we're going to determine how much overhang to have on the front. Now, a nice little tip when you're doing this is to work out how big your soffit's going to be based upon how many boards you're putting up there. So if you're using cedar and it covers 130 mil and you only want 4 full sheets, that's going to look better. So build your soffit to the size that you're going to clad it with, sort of thing. If you're using a 400 mil PVC board, then you want it to sort of fit, so you just put a whole board up and that's covered, and it's covered by the cladding. So measure and work out how you're going to be covering your soffit before you think about your overhang distance. So for us, we're going to need a 450 mil overhang. So we're just going to measure 450 mil from the OSB, which is here, and then we're just going to stick a line on the end of there. And that is pretty much the length we're going to cut all our joists at. It's as simple as that. So now I'll take this down, we'll measure it, and I'll write down the measurement. Right, so now we have measured out where we're going to need to cut our timber. We've calculated our soffit. So all we do is lay our piece of timber flat like this, run our tape along it and get our measurement. So that is 4387. So to make it easy, we're going to add a couple of mil on there, so it'll be a 439. Because your soffit's going to come back under the cladding by about 20 mil, this couple of mil here won't matter. So we'll round it off to 439, 4390 millimeters. We'll write that down. What I normally do is actually write that on the saw. So 4390. This is handy because as I'm cutting, if you forget, the numbers right there. Simple as that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut every piece to this size, and then we're ready to put them up. And what I'm going to do next is show you how to set out each end, and then you run a string line so you can offer them all up to it and you get a perfectly dead straight front line. Before we set all this out, I'll show you a handy way to cut joists with a skill saw. Now I'm pretty sure a lot of you doing this DIY might not have a big chop saw like this, so you'll be using a skill saw, any skill saw. Mark your line with a square where you're going to be cutting. Pop your pencil down, simple as this. Get a little square, this is a little DeWalt one. They're about £5 to £10, they're cheap. Offer your skill saw, hold that square tight with your left hand and offer the line up there on your skill saw, and that's going to be your guide, and that will enable you to cut that dead straight. Now skill saws are good for cutting without this, but this is just a handy way of doing it. You put your fence of the saw up to it, fire it up. The most important thing when doing this is when you finish the cut, you keep just driving through. You don't want to stop and let it hang because it will start pulling the timber back. So just keep consistent, push the saw all the way through and do it like that. And then you'll get a nice finish on each one. And that's how you just cut them, really tidy. Now we've cut the joists up, this is how we offer them up to the building. So you want to make sure the timber's got the belly upright. So they're all going to have a bit of a banana in them. Sometimes you get lucky, they'll be straight, sometimes they're not. So you want the curvature of the timber to go upwards. So you flip it over. If it's going down, you don't want that because it's going to dip the ceiling. It will naturally straighten out if it's got the curve. So make sure the curve is on the top. Now, as I showed you earlier, we're going to set this 80 mil. So we've cut it. I've measured the 80 mil from the OSB. And we're going to fix that there. Now to fix this one, because it's a corner, we're just going to stake this in with a couple of screws from either side. So get one just in there, just like that, and then we'll go with the other side. Now as you can see, I'm using the Makita non-impact drill. So that is absolutely solid. We're using this drill, it's nice and quiet, it's not an impact, it's really powerful. What is it? It's the DDF083. So if you're buying a combi set to do a DIY, get one of these because then you don't have to listen to that impact. And also use it to get extra grip. Use these torque screws to get the torque screws from Screwfix. All the links to this will be in the description. These are the screws, and that allows you to not use an impact and just use this little drill. It's the same size as an impact, nice and light. Anyway, so we fix that there. We'll go fix the front in the same way. Spike in a few screws, so two one side, one the other, and that'll be solid, fixed in. We'll do the same with the other side, and then we'll stick our string line up. Now here you can see the positioning of this joist. We start the joist on this side here, dead flush with this wall, so that will catch our plasterboard, and then we can still put plasterboard here. And if you look over the other side, you've got this void here, and this is where we'll do our laddering to run out our side perimeter in order for us to clad up to that soffit as well. And we'll show you how we do all that in a little bit. Now we've got our starting joist fixed, one this end and one that end, we can run our string line, and this is just an easy way. So just do a little loop in your string line, fix a screw in there, and then we're going to run that the whole way down, pull it super tight, and then we can offer all the other joists up to that string line and just go along fixing. Now just as a fixing point, from a fixing point of view, sorry, if you follow me here, as I said earlier, we're going to spike them, so two on one side and one the other. That's a real strong way of fixing timber. However, if your joist lands in the center of one of these, like this, then it is okay just to screw, and it's even better to just screw directly up through the bottom into the joist, because it will just hold it. Put a couple of these in there, 100mm screws, it'll be solid, it's not going anywhere. That's all the roof joists up on the deck there. They're all the right way with the banana at the top. They've been fixed down, they're ready to go. Now we need to do our noggins, our side laddering, and then we can just put our perimeter pieces on, and we've decked it out, simple as that. So marking your noggins, you can just do one big straight line down the center of your room. A little tip, or a trick should I say, here, if you're by yourself and you don't have a laser level or something like that. So we've got 3.6 meter span, we're gonna go center 1.8. Just do a little mark there and then come down 4 joists, something, however long your spirit level is, roughly. Stick another 1.8 there. And then what you can do is it just makes it a bit simpler doing this yourself, getting all the marks on. Like I say, if you've got a laser level, this is going to be much easier, but sometimes this is actually quicker than setting up a laser, because look, we cover such a large amount of the room, and now I can put my level on these 2 marks, line it up, and then I can just mark the rest, look. And even if it moves a bit, it's absolutely fine, because we'll just keep going down. And it will be bang on by the time we get to the other end. So it's as easy as that. Right, now we've marked all that, we've got to do our noggins. So we're going to do noggins, we're going to put one in and then stagger it, so left, right, stagger, so we can screw in each end. We like to screw them, not nails, because screws just tie everything together and keep it nice and tight. Now, we have measured 400 centers and all of this, so that will give us an opening of 355 between each joist. But it should be, but it never really is. No matter how well you mark these out, if you put a noggin in between the ends and butt them up, it's always going to be a mil here or there. So we go with about 5 joists at a time. On a big deck like this, if you're a mil out on every single one, by the end you're going to end up being 20 mil out, and that's going to put a massive belly in one of your joists. So we'll cut 5 pieces, 5 noggins at 355, fit them, and then we'll just run a string line on that joist there and make sure it's still true. And if it's straight, then cool, we'll go for another 5. If it's not, we'll take the last one down a little bit, pull it in, and then we'll keep going again with 355. That way you just work out with all the same spacing, you don't end up with a big belly at the end. Another way is you could measure every single one to the mil, and then the front and the back, and then sort of make an average between each one. But I think the way we do it is the easiest. So we're going to crack on doing that now.
Now this is how we start our noggins. So you're going to put your noggin in there, and you're going to screw it at the bottom and the top. So 4 screws per noggin. I like to screw them because it ties all the joists together, and if any are out of line, it will pull them in really nicely. Then you move over to your first joist, and you'll actually screw your first noggin into that, and that will tie the deck all together. And then what you'll see in a bit with the laddering is how we fix all that to the wall, and it just completes the whole process and makes it a nice solid roof deck. We stagger the fitment just so you can get your screws into the ends just like this.
Okay, now we're onto the side laddering. Again, very easy task, but it ties all the building together, really good. So we use a 185mm piece, and with the perimeter on it, that will set us out enough for our double batten and our cladding, and just have a nice little tidy overhang. You don't want some beefy corners on these. Doesn't look nice. You want to keep it nice and slim. So we probably put these every 800 on the side laddering. So just measure out every 800, pop these on, and you get your 185, offer it up, and then screw from the inside joist out. And that, with 2 screws, 100 mils, that will tie that in so nice together. And the beauty of doing it like this with your slanted walls is you can actually fix these joists all together to your wall. So then you can go inside and screw up into your side laddering, and that ties the roof deck with the walls, makes it absolutely solid, and it's not messy with infills or anything like that. It's just the best way to do it. So we're going to fix all those in, and then we'll move on to the perimeter. Let's work on our laddering. So we fixed our laddering pieces as I just explained. Now we're going to fit our side perimeter, and that is going to be the same length as your center joists that run through the room. As it's the perimeter, we'll fix it on. You can do this with 2 people, 1 on each end holding, or if you're by yourself, there's a nifty little trick of just sticking a screw through a bit of timber. Try not to go through your leg while you're doing it, and just put it like that, because now that's going to sit there and you can rest your perimeter on it. Do the same on the back, then you can offer your perimeter up, fix it, and you're done. The way to line it up at the front, I'll show you in a second. See, now I've got that resting up there on those blocks. That just shows you how you can do it by yourself. You come up your ladder on the front, and what you do, so you've got all that perfectly straight line down there. Just offer your level up, and then you push it up to it. So just give that a push all the way, and then you push it back and get it flush with all of those. And that's it. Now you know you're dead flush with the rest of the line. You can now fix that all up, and you're off. So it's as simple as that. If you're by yourself, pull it up to the level. Do the same on both sides, and then we'll show you how we do the front perimeter. Now we're doing our front perimeter. You want to measure the distance from your furthest point. So if you've got 4/8 timbers, you want to run your tape all the way along and get to the number where it meets. So ours are 4/8, which means they're not going to meet this joist. They're only going to get here. So I want to cut them halfway on that joist. So we'll do a nice little 4/5/8/5, and then we can just put another piece to get us to the end. So with the front perimeter, exactly the same principle as the sides. Put a couple of little feet in the bottom there, and one at that end, and then one person can fit that nice and easy, rest it on, get it lined up perfectly on that end and in the center here, and then you can screw it all in from the front and you're away. Don't be put off by the fact that these don't meet up though. That is sometimes the case, and you'll need to remove this foot and manipulate the board up and down to get them to work perfectly with your soffit. So you want the bottom side of this timber flush. You don't want the top flush because they're all going to be different sizes for the wood. You want to work on your soffit because that's the bit that's going to be visible. If the top's not flush, you can get away with that with putting your OSB over it, but the bottom side, you want it to be perfect for all your soffits.
Now Jappers is fixing all of the perimeter boards on. He's fixing them at the top and bottom with 100mm screws. You can nail it with 90mm nails, it's whichever you like, but make sure you fix at the top and bottom, so when you're doing your fascias, none of your fascia nails hit the screws that you fixed your perimeter on with. Now we've finished up with the roof deck, we've done the noggins, done all the perimeter boards, we can move on to the OSB.
And before we start decking out our roof and showing you how we do all of that, let's just go over what weight can be imposed on the joist and see what deflection you get with the joist going off the span table calculation. The span table there, as I mentioned, you can have a permanent load per meter square of 50 kilos, and then you can have an imposed load of 150 kilos per meter square. Now, it just so happens that we've loaded all our boards here, and these are 1.4 square meter boards, and we've got them sat on top of each other here. So we've now got here 360 kilos of weight on this section, which is 2.44 square meters. So if you divide that up, you're going to end up actually with the prime number of 149 kilos per square meter. So we're actually doing a prime example here of that imposed load. Now, I don't know when you're ever going to get this amount of weight on one section of the roof. You'd have to have a hell of a lot of snow to be able to get this imposed load. But we've proved it here, and this is what the span table says. We've gone for a 3.8 meter span out of a 6x2 here. So we've stretched out what the span table says a little bit. But now, as you can see from the measure underneath, that there is no deflection or sagging of the roof joist in this section where we've got all this load. So if you look here, there is absolutely zero deflection on that level. So it's not rocking from either end. It's dead flat, which means there is no dip in the roof. Completely flat. So you've got to go off the span table what it says, but you can stretch it a little bit because it always is a little bit overkill. If you're building a garden room or it's a shed, it's not going to be to regs. So you don't want to go put a 2x2 on the roof, but just as you can see here, look, if you're doing a 4 meter span, it's more than likely you can get away with a 6x2 and you're not going to get hardly any deflection from this amount of load on there. So I hope that helps and answers some questions. And if you're not going to regs and you've got an inspector come around to sign it off, you can get away with just that little bit more extra span without having to go up to a 200, like an 8x2 or something like that. So I hope this helps. Now let's get on to decking out your roof. Right, now we're onto the deck. This is how we start with our first board. We start with the groove side on the front and on the left-hand side, and we're going to work from left to right of the building. We do it every time and it works. The genius thing with these boards is you don't have to have the end of the board landing on a joist, so you can just run your whole sequence all the way down there of boards, glue them on the tongues and nail them. So on your first board, you start off by nailing this corner, and then you'll tap that edge to be level there, and you'll nail that end. Nail in between, and then you nail your center pieces all the way along and leave this side free. So when you start on your next board, you can glue it, offer it up, and it's not tight down so it doesn't pinch, and you can get that board in, and then you'll nail both of them. And we'll just show you how we do that now.
Now let's get started fixing the boards. So position the board along the front perimeter perfectly flush with it, and then go along and mark out your joist. The reason we do this is so you don't have to faff around using string lines or anything. If you mark your joists on every board as you go, you know where they all are, and you can sort of guess where the middle is, and it's unlikely you're going to miss any joists. Moving on, we use 65mm ring shank nails. You can use screws if you don't have a nail gun. Choose some 50 or 60mm screws, they'll be just fine for fixing the boards down. So start with the top left corner, fix that, and then work down to the other side and fix that. Then you can go along and you can fix the middle of the board, remembering not to fix the tongue side until you've put the next board in. This is the wood glue we mostly use. It's affordable, it's a good price, we use so much of it and it works really well. It takes ages to go off, but we're okay with that. We also use a 5-minute glue, which you can find both of these on the Amazon shop in the description of the video. You glue up the tongues like that, then you push the boards together. You get a bit of spillage, you can just wipe that down with a cloth or your foot, and it dries clear so it won't affect your rubber when you fit that up. And that's that.
All right, so on this particular deck, it hasn't worked out perfect for me to show you how we do it, because we lay boards in situ as we go down, then we get to the end one, we lay it, and then we just chop it off the end, and we start with the cut off piece. So you've got zero wastage on this roof deck. So when you do your measurements and working out your wastage and stuff, you don't need to do any. So that's how we do it. But on this deck, it's actually worked out to be exactly 3 boards. So if that is the case, it's kind of good, because then you could just chop a bit of a board, maybe a good 400 or so, lose that, and then you'll start your pattern again, and then you'll be ending with a cut every time, and you start with the next piece on the next row. Right, so now we're starting on our second row. To make it easy to cut the boards in size, we're going to overhang that and then just run a skill saw down there. In my case, I've got a saw with a track, so we're going to use that and a bit of extraction, because you don't want to breathe the dust in with all this, it's not good for you. So that's how we do it. And then to fit the boards, you just offer up the groove side into the tongue of the first board, and you can do 2 things. You can either jump on it and sort of do it with your feet like that, which is the way, or have a bit of wood and a hammer. And I like to stand on it when I do this, because it stops it bouncing back out. Stand, get the centre of the board, just give it a couple of knocks, and that's going to tie it in nicely. If the boards aren't going in properly, what you want to do, if you're screwing or you're nailing, either's fine. Screwing's good, nailing's fine. Start on one end, fix, and if that end's not going in, you want to just come down here, give it a couple of taps and tuck that in. From where you've marked your joist, just go top, then that's it. That board's fixed, we can nail that in. We can keep running the whole board all the way down, and then we'll just carry on doing the whole deck exactly like that.
Jack was here. That looks quite handy, doesn't it? One handy.
Now, managing the space when you're doing a roof deck is imperative, because it can get quite crowded up there. You want to get a few rows done and then get all your tools up so you've got the space to move around. Move a few boards back to the front of the room and put them on the boards you've already laid and pinned. Then you can work down the deck, and as you go down you can move all the boards onto the part you've laid, and then you can just work towards the rear of the room with a clear space.
Now we have finished the roof decks. We've glued them, nailed them. As I said earlier, you can nail 60mm ring shank nails or just use some 50mm screws, something like that. 50mm is probably better. Once we've decked it all out like this, you've got to go around with a Stanley knife. I like to just trim off the edges like this, look. Oh, steady. So just on the corners, you come down here, Lee, I'll show everyone. Now on the corners, I just like to tidy them up, you know, just give it a little corner trim like that, and that will let the rubber just kind of roll over the edges. Do that on all the corners, and then on the cut ends you can just run your foot like this, look, that's going to pick off all your bits. Run your foot along the edge and go around and do that. Now you can get your sort of orbital sander and go over every tiny bit, but that rubber's so thick and strong it doesn't need it. We've been doing this for years, it works this way. So don't worry yourself, but just go check the whole deck and make sure there's no high points or nails sticking out and things like that. It's just very good to prep the deck before you lay your rubber, because what you want to do now is let your rubber sit. So you want to put your rubber out, roll it out, tack it around the corner so it stays on, and that's going to let that rest and you'll get all the creases out. So leave it for 3 or 4 days and then come back and then you can glue it. So we're going to go get the rubber now and chuck that on. Now before we lay the rubber, we want to get all the dust off the roof deck. You can use a broom, it's a bit hard and it doesn't get everything off. These are great. A little blower from Makita, I'll put the Amazon link to this in the description. These are handy and they're very cheap, body only, and you can use your batteries if you've got Makita tools. This is the best one, but understand if you're doing DIY, you're not going to use this, but we use this to get all the dust off the roof, and that's the best way to prep it.
If you're going to use a blower, then go across it nice and carefully and just get all of the dust out of all the nooks and crannies. If you're using a broom, use that, brush it all off the side and get it nice and tidy, ready for your rubber.
All right, now we got the rubber up here. This is 7.7 by 5. So measure your deck out and order your rubber. Now you want to be about probably 300mm bigger on each way, just so it can have enough overhang for your gutter and stuff, and then you've got enough to tack it to your fascias, because you want to let this sit for a couple of days. All right, so this is a 7.7 by 5, so it's more than likely to cut it from a 5-meter roll, which means it's going to be 5 meters wide and 7.7 long. So you kind of want to just roll it out as best you can by yourself. If you're doing this by yourself, that is. If you've got someone to help, you can, but it's nice to get it all stretched out like this. Little overhang. And then you'll have a bit tucked under here. and this just helps with how you get it out. You start unfolding it and it's going to get all creased up and you'll be working it for ages. You don't want to waste your time. So there we are. So now I'm going to just unfold it piece by piece, and don't be too cautious with it. Like I said, this stuff's thick, like it's super durable. You haven't got to tread like you're on ice with it. And if you did drop a tool on it, it's not the end of the world, and don't panic because you can always puncture repair it. Now, you don't want to be doing a puncture repair in the centre of your new roof, but just keep it in mind, you do make a mistake, these are repairable. So, now down here, look, I can see that our fold is here. So that's folded in half. So what we want to do now is hang that off the back, like so. I'm just showing you this way because it's a one-man job really. You can do it all by yourself. There we are. Get a nice bit. You can stand on either side and sort of just tap it towards you like that. That'll give you your overhang. Pull it back towards you a bit. And then we're off. There we are, look, now it's all coming together and it just keeps it real dead flat this way. And now that's just going to be a half fold out. And what I'll do here, look, because I've pulled a lot down, is just pull this side up, which will stop that snagging, and I can get the length I want over here. So now we can pull the other half off, work it from the middle. Pull it all out. This side. And there we are. We've kept it all nice and tight. Look at that. So we're tight in the middle there. Now we can work to an edge. Pull that tight. Now this side. Again, just pull that tight with your legs, look. Easy as that. If you've got any little lumps in the middle, just pull up your edge, stand it, give it a little tug with your leg. And now what you want to do, just with these seams, just go around with a broom and just push it all along like that. Do that with the broom, straighten it all out, and then we'll show you how we tack the sides. Now we've laid the rubber out, we're just going to tack it down so it doesn't blow off. Now there's two ways you can do this. What I like to do is just fold corners and go right in the bottom of the fascia there, and just put a 100mm screw in, just about 20 or 30mm, and just run them along every sort of metre the whole way down, just like that. And that way, when it blows, it will just catch it like that and it won't tear it off. If you're really worried and you've got some really windy weather going on, you want to get your batten, just like some 25 by 50, and run that along and screw through it. Now, I've never had a roof blow off, just so you know, doing it this way, but I've seen some people doing the batten, so you can do it either way. This just works for us and we haven't had a problem, so that's how you do it. All right, that is the end of the video. As you can see now, we've got the complete deck done. We've tacked our rubber around the sides and we're gonna let that sit for 3 or 4 days before we glue it. If it's a hot day, it's only gonna take a couple of days to sit, but if it's a bit cooler like it is in this, we're in sort of September now, so it might take 3 or 4 days to settle down and get all the creases out.
This is a little fast forward into the future, but this is the deck after 4 days in about 15-degree heat, and it's perfectly flat.
We're ready to go. I really hope this video has helped. I hope the span tables helped. I get asked a lot of questions about spans and roof joists and things like that, so I'm really hoping that's been handy for you. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and as always, please hit that subscribe button, because I love making these videos. I want to do more to help you guys out, and any help from you would be much appreciated. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.